everybody, Gina DeLuca here. All right, going to try a new color palette today. I have Amsterdam Standard Series Acrylic in Caput Mortem. That is going to be my base coat slash background color. I have this color here is this Little Piggy in Persephone. This is one of my favorite colors from this Little Piggy Pigments. It has a really pretty, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but a deep magenta flash to it. The pigments will appear different when they dry. This color is Axolotl, and it has a kind of a purplish flash to it. It's very hard to show that on camera, but perhaps you can see it. This one is Golden Peach, and it has a gold flash to it. And this color, this is a custom blended color. This is Liquitex Basics Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue, Artist Loft Vermillion, and DecoArt Satin Enamel in Pure White. So, the way these paints are mixed. The Caput Mortem is just Floetrol and paint. 1 part paint, 2 parts Floetrol. You could go 3 to 4 parts Floetrol. The Amsterdam paints are very highly pigmented, so you can actually spread them out a little more than other types of paint. The pigments, they are mixed. I put a bit of Jo Sonja gloss varnish in the bottom of my cup, just enough to cover the bottom. I put some of the pigment in. I mix that up gently while wearing a mask. I cannot stress enough, please wear a mask. It is really important because you will, no matter how careful you are, have little bits of the pigment that become airborne. And if you are not wearing a mask, you will inhale it. If it gets in your lungs, it's going to stay there for all eternity. So, mix the pigment with the Jo Sonja. And today I used the Golden Matte Gel, the regular matte gel. So I add some of that to it to thicken it up until it is a tube paint consistency. And then I add Floetrol to that. The Satin Enamel blend, I do half Satin Enamel and half whatever other paint I'm using. Whether I'm using white or a colored paint, it does not matter. I use half Satin Enamel, half regular paint, and then add Floetrol to that in my standard 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol recipe. If you need to add water to it to get the consistency that you want, you can do that. If you are new, you can do a mixture of 90% water and 10% Floetrol. That will kind of help you to not over thin. It's not necessary, but if you're new, it can be helpful. The consistency that we're looking for, this is a 2 on my consistency scale. It makes a mound, but it disappears quickly. And it is making a nice, thin, even stream off of my stick. If it's getting thin and thin again, that means your consistency is inconsistent and you need to keep mixing. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need, the exact paint brand, color, consistency, the recipe, the technique, all of the things that I can't fit onto a card. This is the picture of the painting in that video. This box contains a tip for this particular technique. Here at the bottom, you have the color palette that was used in this painting, and these two boxes can be used as the basis of a 2-color palette, or you can build off of those colors. There are also 8 bonus color palettes. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors or just some of the colors. Mix and match the bonus palettes with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do here is put some paint in my cup. I always like to make sure I have enough for my pour. Sometimes I can get a little heavy-handed on the base coat. That is the next step. You will notice I've already covered my edges of my painting. I will be reserving some of this to go in the top of the cup and also on the corners if I need it. I have already covered the edges because I am using Floetrol and I am using a thin mix. That combination can not really stick all that well to the sides. And when that happens, I feel compelled to go back and touch up the sides because I want the sides to look nice too. Covering the edges first makes it so I don't have to do that. That's especially helpful if you are doing a custom blended color for your base coat, because sometimes it can be really hard to get a perfect match. And the reason we lay down a base coat is because we want the paints to slide around easily and evenly. And something has to stick to the canvas first. If it is not your base coat, it is going to be your poured paint. And what will happen is the edge of your puddle will stick to the canvas, and then the center of the puddle will roll over top of that. Sometimes some of the coolest stuff that happens on the edge. And I like having the option of keeping negative space if something amazing happens on the edges of the pour. That is also one of the reasons why I use the color that I use for my base coat is a color that is in my pour. Typically, whatever the background is, if I'm doing a straight pour, the background is the color that does not sell. That is the color that the cell makers react to. I call it the background because it kind of falls to the background and the cells pop forward. Using the same color for your base coat as what is in your poured paint will help if you get bubbles in your base coat, which I'm going to pop right now, but sometimes you still wind up with some. If I were using white as my base coat and I still had some bubbles in my base coat, they would pop up through my pour. I would wind up with tiny little bubbles, tiny little cells in my painting, and I would find that to be annoying because there's no white in my painting. All right, let's put some paint in a cup. I'm going to start with the Persephone. I'm going to pour from up high. I want these paints to sink and churn. You may be saying this color is very much like the background color. The reason I love this color is because of the flash that is in it. It is so pretty. And these pigments often blend together. Sometimes they attach to the cell maker and you can get some really cool effects. Okay, going with the axolotl next. Again, pouring from up high. I love hearing that plop. That means that it is probably making it to the bottom of the cup. Now for the golden peach. Always check your consistency before pouring. The sauce may thicken upon standing. And finally, I'm going for the cell maker. The way that I choose what order the paints go in, I like to have as much contrast as I can get in the center. And so for some reason, when I load my cup this way, the last color that I put in ends up at the very bottom of the cup, just a bit of it does, and that gives me my center, and that becomes the focal point because that gets stretched the most. Hopefully that made it to the bottom. If you are uncomfortable about pouring from up high, you can practice in your sink just using water to get used to the motion. I was a bartender at one point, so that was just kind of a thing we did. Okay, going to just put a little bit of this on the top to cover up my cell maker, reserving a bit in my cup for the corners should it be necessary. And I am going to try to stay in the center. I don't want to spin quickly because I don't want this to look like a ring pour. The slower I go, the more pronounced the spiral will be. It is a bit of a challenge trying to stay perfectly centered on these spiral pours. That is probably the part that takes the most practice, hoping for my peach to come. There it is. Perfect. Beautiful. And I can see some shimmer in there, so it is blended with some of those piggies. Once I get to the center, I like to try to get at least 1.5 full spins in. And as I get towards the end of the cup, I get closer to the canvas and I move a lot more slowly. Okay, 10 on the dismount. Perfect spiral, love it. Now, this is where we have to be patient. The thing about a straight pour we're not using silicone. We are waiting for the reaction to happen between the matte and the gloss paints. The DecoArt satin enamels dry very matte in comparison to the Amsterdam paint. And if I allow this to sit, these cells will develop. There's a hydrophobic effect that takes place between the matte and the gloss paints. So this peach color is going to come up, it's going to pop up. Every time I pop these bubbles, you'll see little tiny cells pop up and then they grow, they get bigger. So I keep popping the bubbles. I discovered this effect by accident. My torch wasn't working and my paints sat for about 7 or 8 minutes while I tried to fix my torch, and I came back and there was a whole mess of cells on this giant painting. And it was only my 15th, actually the 16th video is where I wound up with the first Boulder cells, video 16. And that is when the Boulder cell was discovered. And in video 15, that was pearl cells basically that developed. If you stretch it right away, you get pearl cells. If you wait for the cells to develop, you will get Boulder cells. For those who don't know, I'm the one who named the straight bore back in like 2018, I think it was. There are a lot of people who are calling things straight bores that were not the original intent for straight bore, of what I was calling a straight bore. But, you know, things morph, they grow, definitions change. It's just the nature of things. But for me, a straight bore is no silicone, mixed very thin, so that you can get the reaction. The thinner your paints are, the more unstable they are. And so the Rayleigh-Taylor instability can take effect. That's when you get cells from different densities of paints. The heavier paints will sink. And this is a hydrophobic effect. So this is a very different way of getting cells without using silicone. But just like the Rayleigh-Taylor instability, your paints need to be fluid enough for it to work. So if you're using all the exact same ingredients, the exact same paint brands and colors, it makes a difference. For instance, Liquitex Basics Cadmium Yellow Light Hue will create cells on its own, but the medium hue or the dark hue in the Cadmium Yellow will not give you cells. They are glossier than the Cadmium Yellow Light Hue. So if you're trying it and you're not getting the same effect, you're using all the same ingredients, it is probably your consistency. All right. I see some beautiful blending that's going on in here. This is going to be very, very cool. Loving it so far. All right, I am going to touch up my corners a bit before I spin. As you allow these paints to sit and develop, you can get a little bit of skin forming on your corners. The corners are the place that's going to dry first. It's going to set up first. It's going to get a skin first for some reason. So, going to zhuzh them up a bit and just make sure that They are nice and lubricated and ready to be spun off. And I'm also going to make sure that my sides are also still evenly covered here, because they can also set up. And if you have spots on the side that are starting to dry, it will resist the paint sliding over, and you will wind up with uneven spin-offage. I don't know what word or phrase I'm looking for there. Y'all know what I mean. You don't mind if I make up my own words, right? All of these little steps that I'm doing, as I like to say, I like to troubleshoot before there's trouble. I have noticed that these things have given me problems in the past, so I just try to take care of it before it gives me trouble. All right. I think we're ready for a spin. Let me make sure that my center is indeed centered. All right, going to give this a twirl. We're ready. And you don't need to spin fast. If you've ever had a painting that wasn't level as it dried overnight, you know how much it can move over time. Okay, so these corners need a little extra love. I'm going to slide in the direction that it needs extra coverage. So I need this corner to be covered, so I'm going to slide it that way. It's like being on one of those merry-go-rounds in the playground. The further out from the center it is, the more it will be pulled by the centrifugal force. Another thing that we can do, I have a bit of paint left over in my cup, but I'm going to be very patient and allow it to come down. And just put a little on this corner. And when I spin this, it will actually blend out. So if I don't have the best coverage on the corner, it will still be homogeneous. As you can see, my drips don't really go very much past the corners. There's no reason for this to end up on your wall. Regardless of the size. I have done very large pieces and it's the same thing. It's only going to the corners. So if you're worried that you need a big, swimming pool to do this in, you really don't. You don't have to spin as fast as you think you do to get it to where it needs to go. Okay, I am covered, and I don't think I want to spin anymore because I love what is going on this edge here, and I want to keep that. So I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to let it do what it's going to do. I'll probably have more cells developing, and yeah, I'd be perfectly happy if it stayed the way it is, but typically I wind up with more cells popping up. But I love what is happening with this blending, where the pigments have attached to some of the DecoArt, and it just sits on top of it, and it is creating a very lovely effect. Is that a gigantic hair? Oh dear. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. This is where, if you were good at the game of Operation when you were a youngin', this will be very handy. Okay, looks like 2 hairs. Thank you, kitty cats. Woo! All right. I was very good at the game Operation. I could have been a doctor if the sight of blood didn't make me pass out. I could have been a surgeon, but no. I have to get queasy when I see needles and blood and anything of that nature. All right, I'm going to let this sit. I'll bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, so here it is. Unfortunately, I think I had a slightly warped canvas, and I ran out to a doctor's appointment and came back, and it has shifted considerably. Like I said, it can move a lot over time, but I mean, it's still cool. It's all right. I am kind of bummed that I lost a lot of that Boulder cell action there. The blended pigment, the stuff down here. Boo, that's a bummer. But there is still some awesome 3D cellage going on there. You can really see just how 3D that looks. It happens. Most of the time, my paintings dry the way you see them in the end video. This one has shifted quite a bit, but I don't think it's going to shift anymore. It is already set on the edges. So you can see once the edge is set, it's usually not going to move anymore on you. You can kind of see some of the, some of the bling starting to show on the dried part. Once it dries, the Floetrol dries clear, so when you see it mixed and it's wet, it does have a bit of a milky appearance, but once it dries, it loses that milky appearance and really kind of takes on more bling. But that's what we have. And you really won't be able to see the full effect of the bling until it is varnished. That is just the nature of the metallic paints. So even if this was dry, you really wouldn't be able to see a whole lot of the shimmer like you will once it's varnished. And gets that light refraction going from the varnish. But that's it. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. Do check out the description box below for links to my affiliates. DecoArt being one of them. And you can get the this Little Piggy Pigments at Fluid Art Company. There are coupon codes in the description box. And when you use my affiliate links, I receive a commission at no additional cost to you. So that is super helpful to me without costing you anything else. Also in the description box, you will find my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and fluid art inspiration cards for sale. The cards are also on Amazon. You will also find a link to our Facebook group. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. It is the internet after all. What else are you going to find in there? You'd think I know this spiel by now. Oh, got some really pretty blending going on in there. I can't wait to see this varnished. I know I'm forgetting something. I always do. I will have an auction coming up soon. I have to move. My landlord is raising my rent an exorbitant amount in an effort to make me move out so he can turn this place into an Airbnb. Isn't he awesome? So I have to move, and I'm not going to have space for a lot of inventory. So I will be having an auction before I move out. I believe October 25th is probably going to be the day that I'm going to be doing that. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Mark it on your calendars. I don't know what else. I know I'm forgetting something. I'm a little scatterbrained recently. Have a lot going on. But yeah, okay, that's it. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.